This week on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast, I'm discussing the mid-year markets and economic update. What the heck happened in the stock and the bond markets? What's going on in the economy? And how is that impacting you and your retirement plans? Well, today I want to just recap the first half of 2025 as it pertains to the markets and the economy. Okay, so we saw an absolute plunge at the beginning of the second quarter. So early April, following the announcement of the Liberation Day tariffs. It was a very traumatic time for me because I would wake up in the morning for over the course of several days. This is like, first, second week of April, tariffs were announced and the stock market was in absolute free fall. I mean, I would wake up on the West Coast where I live, stock market opens early, 6:30 a.m. So as a creature of habit, usually around that time, whatever I'm doing, if I'm exercising, getting ready, whatever I'm doing around that time in the morning, I'm usually always up by then. I look at my phone to see like what's going on in the market as it opens, because it usually gives you a pretty good indication within the first few minutes of what's going on and what's driving the markets that day. And sometimes it'll be pretty subdued. But, a lot of times early in the first few minutes, the Dow might be down, up or down a few hundred points. But every day that I would look in early April, it was down 900, 1,000 points within the first few minutes. And I thought, here we go again. I don't think I'll ever forget that, because even in 2008, when the market was cratering, it would still have up days and you'd still have this false sense of hope. But during the early days of the tariffs, it was just day after day after day, down 1,000. And the magnitude of losses, I mean, when you see the Dow going down 1,000 plus points in one day, and that's coming off the heels of a day where the Dow was down like 1,200 points, it's just scary. So that was what the first couple weeks of the quarter, how we started off. But the stock market finished the quarter with an absolutely stunning recovery. So the second half of April, pretty choppy, didn't really recover. And then the market really started to pull itself out of the hole it was in May and June. Really what drove that primarily was just a relaxation on the tariffs. So, Trump comes out initially, and if you remember his big posters where he announced all the various tariffs, and that started to relax and markets responded pretty favorably to that. We also have interest rate cuts that were expected in the second quarter, but that didn't happen. And surprisingly, that didn't really impact, usually if the markets are expecting interest rate cuts and that doesn't happen, that is not good news for the markets. But the markets didn't really respond negatively to that. And then, of course, we have continued positive news coming from further developments of AI. So there's just a lot going on in a lot of different areas as is typical. But the tariffs really, above all else, is what drove the markets down and then back up. So to recap, the Dow Jones Industrial Average finished up 5% in the second quarter. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ, which are much more volatile, they gained 10.6% and 17.8% respectively over the second quarter. And international stocks outperformed U.S. stocks in the first half of the year too, which was, if you were diversified and you had money outside of the United States as well, you saw further enhancement in your returns. Now, bond investors were not left behind. The U.S. aggregate bond index, it gained 3.88% in the first half of 2025. And we saw some longer term interest rates that went up in June. If you recall, the U.S. credit rating agency Moody's downgraded U.S. credit in May. And so investors really are demanding higher yields on U.S. government bonds because of that downgrade. So that helped kick up interest rates a little bit as well, which doesn't help with bond prices. But if you're new entry into the bond market, you're getting better yields in May than you were even previous to that, like in April. All right, so a lot going on, most of which is driven by tariffs, for better or for worse. And I'll be back tomorrow to talk about the economy. How does the tariffs and everything that's going on right now, we know how it affects the markets. But how does that actually impact the economy, which more than anything else is going to be a boom or bust for stock markets? It's all about it's all about the economy, stupid. Who said that? I think it was one of Bill Clinton's advisors, the bald guy. He's always on CNBC. It's the economy, stupid. Okay, you're not stupid. I just like that quote. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Ashley Michike, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips Podcast. James Carville, is that his name? It just popped into my head. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.